On a morning in 2022, I woke up and checked my Apple News like I normally do. I stumbled across an NBC article about banned books. And to my horror, as I read on, I saw my own name and my own book listed. My book, Go With the Flow, is a banned book. This is a longer version of the speech I gave to the Colorado State Senate for Freedom to Read. In honor of Banned Books Week 2025, I want to tell you a little bit about what it means to be a banned book through the lens of how I found out my book, Go With the Flow, was a banned book. So it's 2022. I've just found out my book is a banned book. Let's back up to 2 years before that. In January 2020, Go With the Flow was released on bookshelves everywhere across North America. Since then, it's been translated into many different languages, including Italian, Spanish, and French. It's sold around 100,000 copies, and that was the number I only pulled a few years ago. I think that was 2 years ago when I pulled that number. It was published to critical acclaim. It was nominated for an Eisner Award and the LA Times Book Prize. In late 2021, we heard rumblings about Go With the Flow being a banned book. And that's because in Keller, Texas, a group of people decided to ban a lot of books. By 2022, we got confirmation from an article on NBC that our book was indeed banned. My name's Lily Williams, and I co-wrote and illustrated a graphic novel called Go With the Flow with my best friend, Karen Schneeman. This book is about friendship and periods and puberty. All of this started for Karen and I in college. Karen and I met in animation class, where one day we had an earthquake because it was California. The projector was right over top of me. It started shaking, and Karen decided that that probably wasn't the best place to sit as we got aftershocks, and she invited me to come sit with her. We became fast friends, learning all about animation history together. We had so many classes about storytelling and how to tell a visual story. At some point towards the end of our college careers, we started discussing why there wasn't more art about menstruation, especially in a way that kids and teens could learn about it safely. We put this discussion on hold for a while life happened, and then in 2016, we finally dove into the idea about menstruation and telling stories about menstruation. We decided on a webcomic. Soon, the Mean Magenta was born. It was a webcomic about four friends, Abby, Britt, Christine, and Sasha, navigating their 20s and dealing with all things period. It dealt with work, it dealt with friendship, it dealt with their bodies, it dealt with women's healthcare and what it's like to be a person with menstrual issues navigating the healthcare system in America. We learned a lot by posting and figuring things out together. We made animated GIFs, we made comics, we made a whole bunch of other things. We had guest artists. It was a really fun experience. And soon, my children's book editor at Macmillan asked me if we wanted to make a children's book. From 2016, when it was acquired by Macmillan, to 2020, when it came out as a graphic novel, we turned the story of these four girls into a middle grade graphic novel about friendship and periods. It takes a long time to make a graphic novel. There's not just the story to hone, but also many rounds of artwork. You make a script, then you make thumbnails, then you make pencils, then you make inks, and then you color it. And then finally, after a few months, which typically is about 6 months, it becomes a book. We age down our girls from their 20s to being middle schoolers. We had a bunch of amazing conversations between Karen and I and our publishing house on how to adjust these things, make everything completely age appropriate. We had a lot of boundaries about what we would and wouldn't tell so that this book is accessible to a kid in upper elementary school, a kid experiencing menstruation who maybe doesn't have all the answers they need or maybe feels alone in this. This book felt needed. Go With the Flow captured perfectly so many things we wanted to say about periods, healthcare, and friendship. And for all the things we left out and didn't touch upon, Look on the Bright Side came out in 2023 and talked about the rest. Eventually, this was a duology, a 2-book series about these four girls figuring out many different things in high school, from periods to crushes. Even now, when I do school events or I talk to kids about my books, I feel like we captured everything I really did want to say in our books. And Karen and I are so proud of them. But Go With the Flow is a banned book. Now, you might be thinking, well, I've read it. I maybe have seen it in my library. My kid has access to this at their school. It's in my classroom. Go with the flow isn't banned where I live. And here's the thing about a book ban. A book ban means that that book was challenged and taken off the shelf somewhere. It does not mean it was challenged and taken off the shelf everywhere. A book ban is when a book is removed from being accessible somewhere. And a book ban doesn't need to be broad across America to still be detrimental. When a book is challenged because someone doesn't think that their kid should be reading it or it should be accessible to youth, we have a much larger conversation at play. There have been book bannings happening across America for years now. Specifically, most commonly known in Texas and Florida, there have been a lot of challenged books. And obviously, this feels really alarming, especially in the pursuit of freedom of voice, freedom of information. I have felt very mad at this. This feels really dystopian. I have felt some joy at the fact that our book was banned. Like, we made something so controversial that it was challenged and people felt threatened by that information that we provided. But mostly, when I think about the fact that we have a banned book, I am upset. Karen and I wrote a book about periods that is accessible and appropriate for kids. We wanted to make a book that kids could relate to and learn from. And they can't do that if they don't have access to this book. The larger issue with book bans is that stories help people see themselves in a world through the process of relating to others. You maybe have heard of windows and mirrors, and books provide windows and mirrors into your life, other people's lives, and the world around us through building empathy and the ability to connect with others. Stories help people find their voice, feel less alone, bring people together, create empathy for others, but most importantly for kids, stories can provide a safe space for those who might not otherwise have resources or community to support them. The world needs period stories, just like it needs all sorts of stories. Go with the Flow is a friendship story, period. It's a story about 4 girls navigating high school and the daily drama that happens with that. It's also a story about starting a menstrual revolution. The revolution is aimed to support their peers' access to menstrual products. These girls challenge authority in a very mild form by writing letters and having conversations with authority figures, something I might also add that I too did in high school, albeit about different things, but writing letters and talking to people in power are two of the best ways you can go about respectfully challenging authority. I won't spoil the ending, but when one character takes things too far, she does get in appropriate trouble. There are consequences for her actions. According to UNICEF, about 26% of the world's population, girls and women of reproductive age, menstruate. Menstruation is deeply stigmatized, despite being a completely normal and healthy part of bodily function. Specific studies have shown that girls are going through puberty earlier than they used to, meaning that their periods are starting earlier in their lives. A girl getting her period at 10 is now becoming more common. A girl getting her period at 8, while a little bit rare, does happen, which means we have to teach our kids, not just our teenagers, about this earlier. For many girls, a period starting is the end of an education, either completely or for the weeks of the year that they are on their period. It's hard to imagine this from a place of comfort where period products are accessible, but many girls and women in America cannot afford period products. And for those girls, that means a stifled education, a lack of access to safe period products, and concern for their ability to grow in a good, supported environment. It's easy to think that this is something happening in faraway countries where poverty runs rampant in ways that we sensationalize in media. But this is happening here in our own backyards. This is happening in our own communities. We just don't talk about it. It's not talked about because menstruation is deeply stigmatized. Before the COVID-19 pandemic shut down the world, Karen and I were on a nationwide tour. We did conferences, book festivals, and school talks. The most profound school talk we did was at a lower income school in California. The questions at our other talks had been more simple. We answered questions like, which girl did you relate to the most in your book? What inspired you to write this book? At this school, however, we were pleasantly surprised by some of the questions, which were big questions. Kids asked about reproduction, They asked about how periods can show if you're pregnant, and I will never forget the young, worried girl who the librarian later told us was a refugee and had no female family members in America, who asked us, "Who do you talk about your period to if you have no one to talk to?" This girl broke me. Karen and I cried in the car after we left school. We wrote Go with the Flow for everyone. We wrote it because there's this moment in female and assigned feminine at birth friendships where you talk about menstruation. Girls learn to talk about it in hushed tones, behind closed doors, in private spaces for safety. We wrote this book for kids who confidently know about their bodies, and for the kids who don't understand the changes that are happening in their body, and who no one explained it to. We wrote it for girls, boys, parents. We wrote it for women and people who needed to heal some childhood trauma that their period caused. We wrote it for ourselves. And we wrote it for kids, like that little girl in California, who don't have a safe space or a safe person to talk to about this. When adults censor media intake by banning books or refusing to let their kids watch, for example, Turning Red because it has a period scene, the conversation doesn't stop. The conversation simply moves to a less safe space. As a public school educator myself, I understand this because I watch it happen in the classroom. When kids don't understand something, they talk about it with each other. They look for answers in books. They look for answers in places that will explain it to them. And sometimes these places are not safe. It's the job of parents and educators to answer questions like this for kids. It's our job so that they can learn safely. It's our duty as adults to provide a safe space for kids to explore these complicated ideas without judgment. When we do not provide stories like Go with the Flow, or any of the other books that have been banned or challenged in America, we limit readers' ability to be seen, heard, and build empathy. We cut off the pathways to have those safe conversations and answer questions about the world. I have heard rumors that the reason our book was banned is because the characters challenge authority. And sure, they do. I won't deny that, but I have a few thoughts on that. The first is that we should not be teaching our kids that authority is to be followed blindly without question, but instead we should be teaching them to question the world around them, to become strong thinkers. The second is that I don't buy that challenging authority is the problem for Go with the Flow, because many people challenge authority in all sorts of books, including very famous books like the Bible. It's the fact that the kids are challenging authority inspired by bodily autonomy, with an emphasis on educating girls. Those things together make this book scary to people who are trying to limit information or trying to withhold power from a certain type of individual. But the third thing is that I don't care what the reason for banning this book is. A banned book is not accessible in the hearts and minds of those who need it, and that is a grave disservice to our world and an injustice to a growing mind. So, this banned book week, every single week, you are at the library, you are at a bookstore, you are consuming media. I want you to think about all the media that is censored across the world and in our country right now. When you see something says it's a banned book, consider picking it up and thinking critically about the information within. Consider why it's been banned, why it's been challenged, why that information might be a threat to those who read it, and consider sharing it. Sharing information helps us all. Read banned books, share banned books, and maybe challenge a little authority. For more resources on banned books, you can visit Macmillan's banned book page, which I will link in the description of this video. You can subscribe to hear more from me. I'm an author and illustrator of picture books, graphic novels, and hopefully other things in the future. You can find my books wherever you get your books, wherever you pick them up, be that a library or a bookstore. I always will tell you to shop at your indie bookstores if you are going to buy books, and if you can patronize your local library. That is one of the best things you can do, especially in times like this. Subscribe to my weekly newsletter, Planting Seeds, where I put out weekly little bits of information behind the scenes on my own work, snippets of my next graphic novels, and more. And you can always subscribe to me here. I want to take a minute to thank you for watching and ask that you please like and subscribe. And if you find this information interesting, feel free to share it.